All right, so we've got the aforementioned David Dayen, executive editor of the American Prospect. Great to see you, David.
Good to see you, David.
Yeah, good to see you.
So you've been in the weeds over this Medicare prescription drug negotiating situation with Democrats. And just to give people the context here, because I think this is really important. Democrats have been promising that they're going to make this very simple reform supported by like everyone in the entire country, where Medicare can negotiate with prescription drug companies so that they can get better prices. And now that it's coming down to it, there are a handful of, frankly, corporate Democrats who have become flies in the ointment, who are standing strongly against this incredibly popular, incredibly basic reform. David, just bring us up to speed of what exactly is going on here.
Yeah, this has been part of the Democratic agenda since the so-called 6 for 06, 15 years ago.
Oh my
This
God.
was one of the signature things that Democrats said they were going to do when they won the House 2 times ago, right? So, and it was a feature of almost all campaign ads in 2018 and 2020. So there are 2 committees that deal with this. The Energy and Commerce Committee and the Ways and Means Committee. The Ways and Means Committee actually passed their version of this reform, which allows Medicare to negotiate the price of a certain group of drugs, high-cost drugs, with drug companies. And that not only Medicare patients get the benefit of that, but all of us do, because commercial insurance would be allowed to access those rates. In the Energy and Commerce Committee, 3 House Democrats, Scott Peters from the San Diego area, Kurt Schrader from Oregon, and Kathleen Rice from Long Island decided they're not going to agree to this bill. They rejected it. They put forward their own version, which has a clever twist. It also negotiates price on Medicare, but only for drugs that are off patent. In other words, it preserves the patent monopoly, which allows drug companies without any competition to charge whatever they want for prescription drugs. And so you have this standoff, and it wasn't able to get out of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Now, the House can put this into their final version of the bill in the Budget Committee. However, these 3 Democrats are making a stand saying we're not going to support a bill that has that in there. And of course, Pelosi doesn't have more than 3 votes to spare because of the nature of the majority. So it's a really difficult situation. And you have this reform that is more popular than probably any in this bill. Over 90% of the public supports negotiating prescription drug prices through Medicare. And as I said, they've been promising this for a decade plus, and it's now at real threat for not being in the bill, and that threatens the whole bill, because this not only would save patients money, it would save taxpayers money, it would save the government money, and that money was earmarked to go into spending in the bill, particularly for the health portions, like extending Medicare to cover dental, hearing, and vision, and exchange subsidies in the Affordable Care Act, helping people who would qualify for Medicare if their states expanded it, things like that. So this really threatens the whole bill. It's important to recognize that. It threatens the whole Biden agenda.
David, what is their rationale on blocking this? Is there any rationale whatsoever, like justification? What do they say?
Money, 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 right? Scott Peters has thousands and thousands of health prescription drug company workers in his district. There's a lot of life sciences in there. Kurt Schrader opposes the bill altogether. And Kathleen Rice, it's very curious, because while Schrader and Peters have received hundreds of thousands of dollars from PACs, from pharmaceutical companies, Rice really hasn't. So I don't know if this is just a principled position for her that people should pay more for prescription drugs. But Their nominal point they make is, well, this would stifle innovation. That's kind of the go-to industry talking point, that if you make the price of prescription drugs cheaper, then we won't be able to afford R&D and we won't make new drugs. This is ridiculous. The marketing budgets of prescription drug companies are larger than their R&D budgets. They spend more on stock buybacks than they do on research and development. And the primary research and development arm for drug therapies in the United States is the federal government through the NIH and through academic research grants. So this is a ridiculous talking point, but it's the go-to for fans of the pharmaceutical industry who have a huge campaign contribution arm and a huge lobbying arm.
Every new drug molecule invented over the past 10 years was publicly funded. None of them came from the drug companies and their vaunted R&D. They use their R&D to do things like, we're going to come up with a slightly different formulation of Viagra or whatever their main cash cows are, not really these supposed, life-saving innovative drugs that they're supposed to be betting big on. That's not really what they're doing with that R&D money. So it's always important to explain to people what's actually going on there with that talking point. You also observed a really interesting sort of behind-the-scenes dynamic of how Kathleen Rice, who you point out is now one of the major issues in terms of getting this basic reform done, how she even ended up on this relevant committee. Just break that all down for people.
Right. At the end of 2020, committee assignments are doled out. And AOC actually really wanted to be on the Energy and Commerce Committee. This is where climate change legislation is debated. It's where healthcare legislation is debated. And she got the support of Gerald Nadler, who's the head of the New York delegation. There was an open spot because Eliot Engel lost, and he was a senior member of Energy and Commerce. So there was going to be another New Yorker put on this committee. And AOC went out for it and looked like she had the support. And then at the last minute, Kathleen Rice made this play to get onto the committee, and establishment Democrats voted her in by a wide margin in the steering committee, which is this committee that Nancy Pelosi controls to dole out committee assignments. The Democrats have a 3-vote majority on the Energy and Commerce Committee. If AOC was on that committee instead of Kathleen Rice, this would have passed out of committee. However, because there was, and it seemed like it was almost a political payback because AOC supported primaries against incumbents. So because they were miffed about that, they put now Kathleen Rice on this committee. She votes against the key piece of their agenda. And this could force far more incumbents to lose in the 2022 midterms than AOC would ever have the wherewithal to do. So this is another example of establishment Democrats cutting off their nose to spite their face.
Well, and it's not the only, as you point out, it's not the only example of that. I mean, some of the people who have been real issues here, people like Henry Cuellar, who the establishment also threw all in behind him in his primary. He narrowly wins over a Justice Democrat who's more progressive on the issues, and now he turns around his issue for Pelosi. It's also really interesting what gets punished and what gets overlooked, because Kathleen Rice was very visible and very vocal about voting against Pelosi herself for Speaker of the House a while back. But for some reason, if you attack from the right, it's forgive and forget. But if you attack from the left, then there's hell to pay, and hell no are you going to get on that committee that you want. I mean, it's very revealing here. And as you point out, ultimately now with Pelosi wanting to get this agenda through, it's becoming a real issue for her, some of these right-wing Democrats that she's propped up and supported.
And you'd like to think that Pelosi or the House leadership would learn from this issue and realize that people mean what they say, that when they're coming for your leadership, they could be a problem down the road. But I don't suspect that they will. I suspect that the establishment views going after other Democrats who aren't good on leadership issues as a bigger threat than going after leadership itself and actually trying to vote down these important agenda items. This is It should be a teachable moment, but I don't think it will be.
And so, David, what do you think happens here? Do you think this actually gets through? Because, I mean, it really is pure insanity. If you can't trust the Democrats to get this thing through that they've been promising for decades, that polls at 90%, what can you trust them for ultimately?
Well, the thing is, there was going to already be a fight between the House and the Senate over this, over technical aspects. They were both going to use Medicare to negotiate the price, but it might be fewer drugs. It might be a different reference price that's more accommodating to drug companies. There was already going to be this fight. And now the Senate is really emboldened, right? Because the House can't even get their entire team on board. So you could see the Senate version of this prevail, which saves a lot less money and makes a lot less money available for the overall bill. Maybe at that point, some of those House Democrats will say, okay, well, we got half of what we wanted. There's still a lot of momentum to get something done, but I keep saying there's a non-zero chance that this doesn't go forward. And, we, along with the Daily Caller and the Intercept, did this whip count yesterday because, there are two bills, right? There's the reconciliation bill that we're talking about, and there's the infrastructure bill that already passed the Senate. And House progressives want to keep those linked because they want to give moderates a reason to vote for the reconciliation bill. And they feel like if they vote the infrastructure bill in, then they're just going to abandon the reconciliation bill. So there are 17 Democrats, or I'm sorry, 16, because one of them after publication weaseled out, 16 Democrats who publicly agreed to vote against the infrastructure bill, which has to get a vote on September 27th as part of a deal that Josh Gottheimer made with Pelosi to get the rule through for the reconciliation process. They said they'd vote against the infrastructure bill if they don't have a good enough reconciliation bill. So there's a problem for the infrastructure bill from the left. There's a problem with the reconciliation bill from the right. I don't think there's a scenario where one or the other passes. It's either both or neither. And there's really a non-trivial chance that it's going to be neither at this point.
Wow.
Well, thanks for the update, David. Really crazy. Like you said, it's pretty nuts that the largest purchaser of drugs is not allowed to negotiate the price and is the only people who are allowed to do so.
I think only the 10% who don't support this reform, they must all work for Big Pharma.
For the pharma industry. There you go.
David, thank you. Thank you so much for your help on this issue.
Thanks, David.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. And, we made this pledge yesterday, but here's the deal. Like, we covered Larry Nassar today. That's definitely going to get demonetized. Nicki Minaj has a chance, too. Anytime
Even the
CIA
stuff, the deep state stuff.
We are 100% at the mercy of YouTube whenever it comes to that, and that's why we have to rely on premium subscriptions. It's the only way that we know that we can cover exactly what we want, not have to rely on it whatsoever. All those 9/11 segments that we did on the Saudi papers and all more, nothing, like not a dime. And once again, it's fine. We have the business set up for that way, so that's why we appreciate all of your support so much. When we wake up to plan the show, it does not enter our mind whatsoever. We're going to make money on YouTube or not. This is the only way that we're able to do it.
Yeah,
so,
no, that's exactly right. And I would be lying if I said that it didn't enter our mind when we were at the Hill.
Because
even if it wasn't,
that's how they made all their money.
Right. Even if it wasn't us making that money, it was, is the show going to be sustainable? Exactly. Are they going to cancel us, et cetera, if our segments are getting routinely demonetized? So now, when we tell you we're grateful for you and we rely on you, we really, really, really mean it. Yeah. Because it doesn't even enter our consideration at all when we're planning a show, when we're planning our commentaries, any of that. You guys make that possible, and we cannot possibly thank you enough for that.
Exactly.
We love you guys. We're gonna have some great content for you over the weekend. Check that out. We're doing the mini show. Will get posted on the podcast platforms. So check that out as well, and we will see you guys next week. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.